Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Love to see so many people in the waiting room. It's not even like you're diving out of one meeting to get into another. You were queued up and primed up. So welcome, welcome. For those of you who know the drill, our longtime attendees, I would love it if we can keep our cameras on, show everyone how we do it, our mics off until we want to raise our hand and speak. Let's warm up our fingers. And question is, what have you been reading and enjoying lately? I had to put enjoying because I didn't want you to tell me like some corporate memos or something. I need some books. I'm on the road right now, so I could use some things to read on the flight home. And I see so many people coming in. This is good. I was wondering because it's a Friday before a potentially long Columbus Day weekend. So this is really nice. Alex Myers says The Lazy Genius. So good. I don't know that one, Alex. I'm going to have to get that. Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun. Come on, Dave. Like, I don't know if you should be like leaving that on your desk or in your background because people might think you're going to go a little too hardcore on them. Jay, watching baseball playoffs. No reading. Jay, I was trying to get myself in a good mood. Remember, I'm from Philadelphia. It was not a good week for the Phillies, but now I'm just in San Diego, so I'll be a San Diego fan. Mike Kennedy, who we're going to all be chatting with soon, is just weighing in. May contain lies. I want to check that. All the light we cannot see. Walter Isaacson's Einstein. Read that a while ago. Trish has got another Go Padres. Yeah, I mean, we can go with the baseball theme too, The Fox Wife. This is good. Evan, we're going to have to just compile these and make it the book list for next month, I think, which is awesome. Michelle Lopez, Cassie, good to see you. I love it. Sad about the Phillies, but you're going to support the team, the Padres. Yeah, inspirational leader, coaching habits. I have been reading. It was actually another one of our group members that recommended it. Leslie Camino recommended it a while ago. The Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Joe Dispenza. I don't know if anyone's ever read that. It starts deep, quantum physics stuff, but then goes into mindset shifts and things. And as I continue to strive to be my best self, I do a lot of the professional development stuff. But Lisa's talking about her Royals, made last night a bad night. And Katie's got Empress of the Nile. So welcome everyone, especially the new folks. I think we're still getting some new folks from our outreach and from ATD earlier in the year. Welcome. I'm Kevin Cruz. If you don't know, I'm the founder and CEO of LeadX. This is a community of practice. So there are no other coaches, consultants, vendors. We don't do any selling. We stay out of the breakout rooms so you can have a nice conversation. I want to welcome all of you. And I want to tell you that I know, especially for some new folks, I remember a couple meetings ago where a gentleman was like, when are they getting to the case study? Kevin's vamping too long. And what we're going to do here today is I'm really keyed up about this one. Our spotlight, our case study is the linkage between leadership development and employee engagement at Mediabrands. We talk a lot about trying to show impact. To me, 70% of the variance in engagement comes from leaders. So that's really what leadership development is about. And very few of us look for that impact. And so I'm excited for this case study. We then want to get you into a short networking break because, of course, we want to dig our well before we are thirsty when it comes to networking and social capital. You need friends for when you want some advice, career advice, work advice, benchmarking, etc. We want to bring those to you. And time permitting, we'll chat a little bit about AI. Last month was our special customers only meeting, and we talked about Notebook LLM, and it blew people's minds, and you've probably read about it in the Wall Street Journal and other places. As usual, we were the first to break the news, and then everybody else jumps on the bandwagon. And so it's such a hot topic that we'll see, time permitting, if we can bring it up here again. And of course, I am very lucky because once again, I've convinced my friend, the Dwayne Bess, Director of Sales Training at Hologic, to join as co-host. Dwayne, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, my friend. Like I said earlier, I got my 2 little injections to get my blood to make sure I'm okay. But outside of that, I'm doing great.
Health is wealth. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself there.
I know. Where are you at nowadays?
So yeah, a different background for those of you, I'm not in front of my bookshelves, shilling my own books. I am, I'm in Carlsbad, California. So I've been on the West Coast because I came out for the Blanchard Summit and Partner
Mhm.
event. And so I think most of you know we are a Blanchard partner. LeadX software, our nudges support SL2 and their other programs, and we're kind of deepening that partnership. And it was a lot of fun. I hadn't seen Ken Blanchard in a couple of years and caught up with the Blanchard family. It was a good time. And half of our company is here in the San Diego area. So we just tacked on to do some face-to-face meetings and things. Was anyone out here
It's
for
funny when
the
you said
event?
that.
I'm curious. Yeah, yeah, Eileen's talking about the event and everything too. Dwayne, go ahead. You had some lag there.
I used to, yeah, I use your tool, the tool that you introduced me to last time, actually on an old PDF I had from situational leadership, and I
Oh, no
wanted to see
kidding.
what it would do with it. And it actually did a pretty good job summarizing the sit to PDF I had.
This is great. And so for those of you who weren't on last month's, we showed how you can take, and we'll do it at the end of this call again too. A notebook LM or LM is the tool. I'm gonna have to look at that again, and you can just drag and drop one of your documents, say a training document, hit a button, and it will create a two-host podcast, totally AI driven within minutes. And it's really taken off. And so I had asked Dwayne, I'm like, hey, are you playing around with this with any actual work stuff? And so it's good. It's a coincidence that you picked SL2. What'd you think of the output?
I thought it was pretty creative. I've dropped a couple things in it. I think on my part, there's a decent lag on my end. I think if you go more than maybe 2 pages, it'll take a while for it to
Ah,
populate. So maybe I need to continue to simplify because I had this entire deck for my second line leaders, and I threw in there. I came back like 20 minutes, and it was still trudging. So I think you got to keep it simple.
I'm glad you clarified that because I was only playing with it by dropping like a Forbes article or something short in. So
Oh,
it's nice that it can handle the longer documents. It's just gonna take some time. And Dwayne, I don't want to let
yeah,
you
it
off the
takes a
hook. Did
while.
you answer the question? What have you been reading lately? Because I know you've
For
been
me,
reading at least one or two books.
no, yeah, this is true. Yeah, this is true. Yeah. So for the morning for me, actually, I've been doing this here, Daily Stoic,
Very
which is
nice.
really cool. The thoughts of Epictetus and Maximus Aurelius, and then 365 Days of Power. So these are two devotionals I'm putting together for the next 30 days. So actually, I've just been focused on those two documents and trying to get the most I can out of those as possible throughout the day.
I wonder how many people, you could type in the chat, how many people start their mornings with some sort of reading? Dwayne, I've got, I go on these weird health coach binges, and I've got a really wacky one I'll tell you offline about this new health coach I've got all remote. But like one of her core principles is like, look, you got to wake up like when it's still dark outside and then immediately read at least a page or two of something inspiring, bettering. It's like one of her core tenets. Nothing to do with my workouts or my macros, but she's like, it's part of it. Like you wake up early and you get your reading in. It's powerful. So
Yeah.
Sheila's loving Ken Blanchard in the comments as well. Yeah, absolutely. Myth of closure. So before we get to our case study that I'm gonna totally geek out on, I do want to ask a favor. So as many of you know, we have officially launched our LeadX EQ Habits Solution Workshop Assessment Certification Program, working closely with Dr. Travis Bradbury, and we like to give you guys free things. And so many of you took advantage of signing up for the free workshops. And Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, but so November is full, and we're opening up or just opened up December to fill up, and then certifications will start next year. Uh, but in return, I
October.
want to ask if, oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
it's October is full. November still has some seats.
Thank you, Evan. Jeez, I'm so
Yeah.
bad. For a guy who once wrote a book about time management, I got that calendar date completely wrong. Thank you for that. So we want to ask a favor though. Like we are kind of soft launching like to all of you this year, but we're gonna go hard early next year, and we could use your wisdom, your guidance on positioning, on marketing. And so we created a short survey, just a Google form, and Evan's going to drop the link in the chat. And so if at some point during this call or immediately after the call, if you could answer these 10 short questions, I don't know if it's 10, it might be 8, it might be 12, but it's not long. It would really help us to make sure that we're very proud of what the team's put together, and it's going to help us to understand how to position it in the marketplace. So Evan will drop that survey link, and we can use your help on that as well. All right, so there we go. All right, Evan, I think we are ready for our case study and special guest. So this is very cool. He has over 2 decades of experience in L&D leadership development, including organizations like Tiffany, hello, jewelry, KPMG, and the NBA. I would give up everything in my career to go do leadership development in the NBA. Look at this. He's been featured in Forbes, of course, but also CLO Magazine. He speaks routinely at CLO Symposium, HR Leadership Forum, Corporate Learning Institute. He is our new friend, our expert of the day, SVP of Leadership Development at IPG Mediabrands, Mike Kennedy. Mike, welcome.
Boy, that is a build up to live up to, but thank you for that, Tim.
So, Mike, I have to know, like, the NBA time. Was there ever a time where, like, you did a leadership development program, maybe in the Sixers arena, and you did so good, they said, hey, we want to give you court seats, and then you're there, and all their players got injured, and you needed to suit up, and then you, like, sunk a half-court shot? Did that ever happen?
Not exactly, but it did take a while for my kids to figure out that just because I was coaching people at the NBA did not mean I was an NBA coach. And so we had the occasional disconnect there. I will say that.
Mike, your level of integrity and ethics is so much higher than mine, because if I had been in your role to this day, my LinkedIn profile would just say NBA coach. They would just say that.
Well, but then someone might call me out if they saw the video of me trying to drive the chance I had on Allen Houston and go left. And if that comes out, the career might be tanking, to be honest. So
that's hilarious. Yeah, I had no game at all, and I definitely could never go to my left side in any sport, but basketball especially. So, Mike, I do want to say, full disclosure, your client, Mediabrands, is a client, and we often don't bring our own clients on because we don't want to give the appearance of that we're selling. So, I want to say that is the case, and we'll describe your program as context, but we're not going to go deep into the LeadX stuff. We're really interested in the impact part of it. But let's start at the beginning. So, Mike, where's home for you? And tell us a little bit about Mediabrands.
So, home for me is Morris County, New Jersey. My quote-unquote home office is actually a few miles away at a family member's house, so that's where I'm sitting now. Very, very bikeable on nice days. And my time at Mediabrands. So Mediabrands, where we're increasingly trying to include our parent entity, IPG, there. So IPG Mediabrands we're a holding company within a holding company. IPG, the Interpublic Group, is a really conglomerate of media and marketing and advertising interests. And so under the Mediabrands umbrella, we've got 7 agencies that work in various capacities to support clients with, again, advertising, marketing, media campaigns. And I've been in my role as head of leadership development for just shy of 3 years at this point.
Wow. And so, you're talking about a holding company, 7 agencies. Roughly how many employees and or how many people managers are you responsible for?
So the number of employees worldwide, we've got a little over 18,000, and
wow.
And so increasingly my role is moving to global. It started out as more just US based, but right now it's a transition. So here in the US, which is about a third or so of that workforce. I've got about 2,000 managers, and again, we're expanding out to deal with a force of about 5,000 managers. And by the way, if anyone is doing some back of envelope math and saying, well, that's too many managers, You are entirely correct, and good on you for that math. And so, yes, somewhere down the road, a spans and layers analysis is going to be something we have to undertake. But I won't get on that soapbox.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, I mean, the agency world, you're basically professional service firms, but it's tough. I mean, you land a big client and you're short staffed and everyone's working crazy hours and you're leading people who are working under deadlines and stress. If God forbid you lose that big account or go into account review, you've got bad news for people. It's a very stressful environment, very dynamic, tough on people managers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest, I mean, the single biggest thing that our managers are in some ways tasked with dealing with is just the burnout factor. And yeah, there's always some underlying anxiety. You're right, the loss of a client, and this is public information. We had a loss of a pretty shall we say, a fairly large online retailer. And when you lose that kind of business, and we picked up some on the other side, right? But
Yeah.
you're still either starting or shuttering a small company, and not even that small. You know, you're talking about basically a company within a company within a company that may be hundreds of people. So the anxiety factor is there. A lot of turbulence, a lot of burnout is always a high risk in that environment.
So when you came in to the organization, not really that long ago, just give us a little bit of the context. Did they already have a robust program in place that you were now stewarding? Did you need to stand something up from scratch? How did you approach it?
Yeah, so there are a couple of angles on that, and so the first angle is that prior to the pandemic, there had been an initiative that was called it's called Manager Blueprint that was meant to create some consistency in management practice throughout the organization. And again, part of the challenge is that we are diversified, we're matrix. You know, take any of those words and amplify them because it's unique cultures within each of these seven agencies, and there's been a different number over the years. So just trying to create standardization and common practice is part of the challenge. The previous attempt to do that was really more of a traditionalist model, in-person, multiple days workshop, delivered by certified trainers, but those were also HR business partners. And I love my HR business colleagues, but I don't always know if that's the best way for people to take in good leadership development, right? So there were some things that I questioned about that approach, and that's pre-pandemic. As we were coming back, then that has more or less been left by the wayside, especially in the U.S. What had then during the pandemic gotten underway was a program to help support managers of color, because there was some data that suggested that there were some headwinds that they were confronted with that merited a separate intervention for them. And so this was before my time, but it was underway and successful for a much smaller cohort of managers. And so I stepped in just as that was expanding to accommodate our entire body of new managers. Right. So it went from being a DEI oriented new manager program to one that was for the entire U.S. population of new managers. And we have anywhere in the neighborhood of 500 or 600 of those in a given year. So that was the pivot from probably under 100 new managers um, in a different cohort to opening up to the large group just as I was coming aboard.
Yeah, and again, the scale. So imagine for everyone here, and some of you are in large organizations yourselves, but I mean, 500 new managers or more, every year. And pre-pandemic, the model is, sage on the stage, people in front of the classroom doing it, which obviously all of our worlds changed quickly there. Mike, let me jump though to the content piece. And I'm going to show a graphic that we used in the Forbes article here.
Yeah.
Talk about, so you had to think about, for the new managers, did you use a competency driven approach or what you thought were sound, skills that all new managers needed? How did you craft the topics to be trained?
Yeah, the assessment that had happened for the initial run of that program, the 1.0, was I think it was data gathering more through I don't want to throw any shade on the previous effort, which had a little bit of a different focus. It was done through a lot of legwork that was probably mostly focus group oriented, gathering data from people, not necessarily deep data analysis or going, because there really was also not much of a talent analytics capability at that point either. That's emerged, and it's now a powerhouse for us as well. So at the time, a lot of it was, I don't want to say anecdotal or word of mouth, but probably more just based on listening than it was on being able to dig into research. But the themes were pretty clear and pretty consistent. So I think we did do a little tweaking when we pivoted just to speed up a little. We went that 1.0 that was for the specified population. Then as I came aboard, the 2.0 for that broader population, but wasn't very different from the first iteration. And then when my team really had more control and more data, that's when we pivoted to what you've got us looking at here, Kevin. And we did actually streamline a little bit. I think we had a couple of additional topics in originally, and we were able then to go back, obviously, through feedback for the first iterations and say, here's what seems to be hitting the mark for our participants, and obviously a little bit of the data that we'll see in a few moments, early versions of that then can inform our thinking as well.
Mike, before we continue, I do want to remind everyone, please feel free to add questions and or comments in the chat. Rennie, reading my mind here. We have almost 100 people on this call, which is an incredible mastermind of leadership development professionals when you think about it, and no other forum of it. So while Mike's walking us through, don't hold back. We'd love to learn from each other. And Rennie's asking, how long is each module? How's it delivered? So we see on the slide 4 modules over 4 months. Let's talk a little bit about the cadence and the delivery channels.
Yeah, and each of these verticals was unique in how it was presented, and even each topic under them was unique. It really depended. We wanted to make sure that the content was matched, or that the delivery was matched to the content, rather than just trying to force consistency or something. So, for that self-awareness piece, for example, that was obviously self-assessment, the vendor partner that we work with, group coaching. So a little bit less of the micro-learning and e-learning approach, and more hands-on, including from my team. And we probably needed people to complete anywhere from an hour to 2 hours of work in that first month in order to achieve full completion of components. And we took a certification approach depending on how much people finished. We didn't say either you complete or don't. We had like a bronze, silver, and gold level certification that we issued at the end of the program. So that next module, transition to manager, is where we pivoted into probably having a little bit more, again, micro learning in between activities, completion of assignments. Some of it, we always included a group discussion. So we brought, and we had, again, none of this was quote unquote mandatory. We had about 75% attendance at those group discussions typically. So we had a lot of engagement. And so the activities varied really topic by topic, but they added up to around an hour and a half to 2 hours per month, all told.
Mike, do you say none of this was mandatory?
No, that's correct. And I am not necessarily opposed to it. Once upon a time, the word mandatory made me very uncomfortable, but there is pretty good research that says that there is an organizational benefit to mandatory, but it's also politically speaking, internally, where again you've got different agencies with different priorities. So it would be a real heavy lift to just grease the wheels enough to make that kind of declaration. It will happen one day. But for now, what we found is that our focus is on making people feel like there is a reward, and what we're leaning on now more heavily also is emphasizing that it's a soft kind of mandatory, right? So what we're making sure we socialize is the idea that this is an input into promotion decisions or into upward mobility, that our seeing dedication to growing yourself, and I believe, and I know you believe as well, Kevin, that this is not, there's no such thing as I will take my leadership development package and I will be a better manager and then I'm good to go, right? Even if you're repeating the same learning every
Right.
number of years, that's still important. And so we're pushing our chips in on that and saying, in the absence maybe of the ability to say mandatory, we are going to explain that this will have consequences for your career path.
And I wanted to emphasize that point because I remembered from our interview, we ended up doing with you Credly badges for people who had achieved that level. And I think it was like 78% of participants qualified for the Credly badge. And so for a voluntary program that's lasting for 4 months, I was really pleased with that outcome.
Yeah, and that was a little bit of trial and error as well. That first fully expanded iteration was essentially one where just every new people manager was automatically enrolled, and that was all that was really required of them to do, was just turn on their computer one day and find, oh, I'm enrolled in this program. And what we found was that it really, there was a lot of variability in commitment, and so when we then launched our 3.0 version here, it was application based, and so we didn't put a heavy burden on people, and we only had, as a result, we only had about 20% of the eligible population enroll, and we're doing things to continue growing that number. But of those that enrolled, we ended up, as some probably are already guessing, we had more people completing the program when we forced it as an application based that only had 20% of the population enroll. We got, by absolute numbers, we got more people completing than we did when we made it available to everyone, right? And again, very simple application with just a note from the manager at the end. Yep, I'm excited for them to participate and I'll support them, right? And that was a big pivot for us, going to help. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Mike, I want to consolidate some of the questions, and then I want to get to the impact thing, which is the main takeaway here. But there's a lot of questions around what do you mean? What kind of coaching was it? What is group coaching? Were there peer circles, mentors, et cetera? And I know you might be using group coaching the way LeadX uses group coaching, and so I don't know if that we need to explain that here. But go ahead and respond to any of the coaching or mentoring aspects.
Yeah, well, there was in earlier versions of the program, people were given the opportunity to work directly with a coach. We had another partner that we worked with there, and actually people didn't take that much advantage of it. And as we sort of worked through what was behind that, it felt like the where people were in their career development journey, coaching didn't hit their radar yet as a way to build on what they were learning. And that's where, to your point, that group coaching and peer coaching was a more powerful solution, not to mention more economically sound, right? But yeah. But yeah, so we did those, the discussion groups, and offering opportunities for us to do coaching. Again, using the self-awareness tool, for example, people could come and request that we sit down and debrief that with them. Some member of my team would do that. We didn't have a formal mentoring opportunity engaged with it. But again, really kept very open lines of communication with all of our participants, and tried to meet them where they were at, whatever those needs looked like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we can come back to some of these tactical details towards the end of the call as well. So let's shift a little bit, Mike. Anyone who follows my work, like we at LeadX, we beat the drum about, like, we need to hold all of ourselves and each other to a higher standard when it comes to results. The reason why there's been a great depression in leadership development for the last 2 years, where everybody's budget's getting cut and heads are getting whacked, is because we're too often, myself, we're taking orders from above to implement a program, and the only metrics we're really asked to report is activity. How many butts are in the seats? How many people did you graduate? And most of us are not doing additional metrics. And we know, Evan, I don't remember what we found in our last, benchmark report, but very few people were doing level 4s of any kind. So, Mike, you surprised me in that you're one of the few people who said, look, we think we're moving the needle on employee engagement, and I'm going to work with folks internally to try to measure that. So tell us more about that, and you can take over slides if you like as well.
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. And yeah, but I don't know when in particular I got the bee in my bonnet about measurement, but I did equally become frustrated, and not even so much because of needing to report out. I have had the benefit of generally not having any higher ups come and say we need you to prove the ROI of what you're doing. I mean, we've been challenged, we've been asked to explain why we want to spend what we're going to spend, but I haven't had that level of scrutiny. But I want to make sure that what we're doing works. I'm not I didn't come into this business just just so that I could feel good about putting something out there, but not knowing if it's working. So years ago, when we finally really saw that engagement was, I think, became settled science, right? When it became clear that engagement is a predictor of performance. And obviously there are other factors to take in. You can have a high engaged workforce that's low performing, but many other things being equal, engagement is likely to create a higher performance culture, right? So once that was the case, I felt like that was permission to say, well, now let's really put our focus on connecting to engagement, right? And specifically the engagement of the people supported by leaders who participated in the program. In other words, and I'm very, very candid, by the way, with our participants about this. When we do a kickoff or orientation to a new leadership program, I said, listen, I am an advocate and a champion for you all. I'm here to support you, but I want to be really candid and tell you the first thing I'm looking at is not your career path, is not your engagement. I'm looking at your teams and how your teams are performing and how well your teams are engaged. So I don't want you to be surprised when I say, okay, great, I'm glad you like it, but how's your team doing, right? Because it's leadership development, not self-development. And so with that lens, I was really, really excited. As I said, our talent analytics function has become really robust in the last couple of years. And so they gave me the opportunity to really parse the data. And so also the upside of only having 25% of eligible participants enroll in the program is that we then had a huge control group. So the data that you're seeing here, and it leads with that NPS, right? So people, I hope, are familiar with that figure, which is not necessarily a great one for assessing learning on an activity level, like what are you doing right or wrong. But when you think about it for leadership development and engagement, this is the NPS, the Net Promoter Score. In other words, if you work for someone who went to our manager program, how likely are you to recommend the organization to a friend, to a colleague, right? So that's what Net Promoter Score is about. And our NPS is about 17 points higher, and that's on a scale of -100 to +100. Um, so almost 17 points higher for employees who reported in to someone who certified through our manager program. So that's a pretty, we felt pretty good about that number, and then highlighted. And by the way, this is 2 slides. I want to be clear also. I'm going to show that not everything went through the roof, but these are some of the inputs into that with some of the more manager oriented behaviors highlighted. So we saw a very favorable difference between how favorably people, again, who reported into these trained managers versus those reporting into the control group. We did have one very interesting outlier here on the negative side. I'll show slide 2 again. I don't want to leave any information unstated here. And so the one unfavorable delta was that people who reported into our trained managers said they didn't feel it was as safe to speak up and express their views and opinions without fear of negative consequence. And there are lots of possible explanations for that. That could, we could talk about that for a long time, but it just gives you something to follow up on, right? And say, well, let's find out what sits under that. And so I'm thrilled that we were able to extract this kind of data and really, and very quickly also, we did the managers themselves. I don't want to say that we didn't look at anything with them. It turned out that their engagement numbers were not particularly different from that of the control group. But one thing that was really interesting is that their well-being numbers were much higher than that of the control group. And again, don't know exactly why that is, and we'll investigate further because we want to take advantage of whatever is going right there. But those managers who have been through the training, through the programming, are just much more likely to report feeling a sense of mental well-being in particular.
Mike, like I said, we always need to be careful about the reasons behind some of these
Yeah.
numbers and things. But it would seem to me, now what's interesting is, in other LeadX projects where the training was around stress management, we've reduced stress by 33%. Okay, that makes sense. We didn't teach, it wasn't one of the topics like stress or, well-being. I'm wondering how much just that social, the group huddles, the monthly, I'm making friends across the company. I've got a support group. There's now people that have my back. I've got people to talk to once a month about, okay, we just learned about effective feedback. Let's red light, green light that in a conversation. Like, I would have to think that just the process itself made people drove well-being. Is that resonating?
Absolutely, and I would say the combination of that and just there's such a sense of ambiguity in the job of manager if you're not getting that kind of support, right? And not hearing from others, just so that it's not just me, right? This is hard, and so I think those are absolutely inputs into what we saw here. Yeah.
Alex is, this is a pretty detailed analytic question, so we'll see how it goes, Mike. But Alex is saying, did you compare the engagement of the managers in the program? Like, if the manager was more engaged, with a higher NPS, was their team more engaged? So the more engaged the manager, the more engaged their team member.
Yeah, not as a derivative of anything that we could tie to the program, or to our efforts, right? I think the feeling that we had from the talent analytics team was that there was too much noise in that. That yes, there is some linkage between the engagement of managers versus and their teams, but that didn't there wasn't a real difference there between the control group and the non-control group.
And having written about this a lot, in general, you see a strong correlation between, it's hard to, if your manager doesn't want to be there, it's hard for that person to fake it so well that, you're pumped up. But also interesting is if you think of the classic pyramid org chart, generally the most engaged folks are closest to the CEO, and then it starts to fall off. And part of that could just be, closer to mission, more aligned on strategy, sort of a breakdown of the communication that goes down. But again, friendly reminder, Gallup research, LeadX research, 70% of the variance in engagement is tied back to that manager, at any level. It's really the core of it. That's really good. Simon Sinek's new idea is that cultivating friendships is the solution to loneliness, the decline in well-being, increase in feeling of isolation we've seen in recent years. Yeah, that would support this idea that you're giving people a forum to have a new best friend at work, is the old Gallup question, right? That's very predictive.
Yeah, agreed. And just again, because of the unique nature of our industry and our company, and the potential for siloing, it was really revelatory for people to be able to cross over a little bit and hear from others. And in fact, as we expand globally, I think our first line thinking was, well, we want to make sure that people are speaking to folks within their own ecosystems who might have comparable challenges. And we're now really rethinking that and saying there's probably going to be additional benefit to letting people interact with folks in completely different regions and markets. And we'll see, but the signs seem to point to that being another thing that can elevate that sense of engagement with their peers.
Yeah. Mike, I want to give people a chance to huddle up and make some friends in a small group here, and we can come back to the conversation on the back end of the breakout. But my last question for you is, now that you've had some distance from the conclusion of this program, you've seen these results, any observations from you, things you wish you did differently, ways to look at the engagement issue differently in the future? Any takeaways?
Yeah, the thing that is, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to hear this, but the limiting factor, it feels like at this point, continues to be just, it's not even so much how aggressively can we market it, but how do we continue to create visibility for other managers, senior leaders, for their buy into this and for their own prioritizing it, right? And we're still, it's hard to get busy people to stop and take a moment to provide their endorsement or to talk things up. And we're getting better at it. And as the company grows in certain ways, I think that will help us as well. But yeah, the biggest piece for us is just how do we help create momentum, even with people understanding that this is a positive career step to take. Do enough of them know about it? Are they hearing it from people that they're going to listen to? Right. So that's really the biggest thing I think that we're focused on continuing to grow as a capability.
Mike, I said that was going to be my last question, but I got one more. And you probably know I often save my awkward questions for the last. So if you get mad and bail out, we got a good interview out of you. What's your professional relationship like with whoever's in charge of employee experience at IPG Mediabrands? I mean, are they looking at you as like, hey, this is great data, let's figure this out together, and take some of my budget, Mike, because you're helping drive experience higher? Or are they like, who's Mike? What are they doing over there? They're completely siloed.
Yeah, no, we work very much in lockstep, I'm happy to say. That employee experience group was the one that initially launched the more DEI oriented first iteration of this program. And so really, and boy, what a credit to that organization that they were, as we came in and said, you know, with folks that have maybe a little bit of deeper learning expertise, there are some things we would do differently in this program. And they were, you know, I kind of got from people like, well, be careful, don't change too much. They might be upset that, and what I got instead was truly exemplifying kind of the listening that you'd want from from folks in that field. So we work in very close partnership.
We're going to have you back soon for everyone to learn how to foster that relationship in their own organizations, I think.
Have great partners, but that's right. Yeah.
No, that's great. Hey, Evan, with an eye on the clock, let's get people into breakouts for about 10 minutes. I'm not going to go take over the slides, but friendly reminder, it's really your time. But to conversation starters, you could share your takeaway from this case study. Share whether you're looking at engagement as an outcome measure in your program, and we'll go from there, and we'll call you back. I want to talk a little bit about this, this AI stuff that is just impacting all of our lives and our roles in leadership development. And I'm curious for the group, if you can type, are you familiar with this new tool? Let me advance the slide. Notebook LM from Google. Are you already familiar with it? Have you already been playing with it? Has anybody used it at work yet? Now, Dwayne, you were saying you were experimenting with it on different things, including like an SL2 document, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I've been playing around with it a lot, actually. I have to be very mindful of, Kevin, is because of some of the documents that I have are heavy with product information.
Oh, right.
It has to go through like this agile approval process we have on the back end. So hand slapped actually because something through in this little notebook that I forgot had some information about one of our products on it, and that's a no-no in my world. So, I got a little too carried away, but it's been a lot of fun.
So this is a great reminder. I think the fears of this stuff is not exactly warranted, but when you're using public tools like ChatGPT, like notebooklm.google.com, your company probably doesn't want you uploading and sharing documents that have confidential information in it. Now, these organizations claim that they are not going to use that information to further develop their model, that they don't do anything with it. There's some skepticism around some of that. So best practice is, look, if you care about the information sneaking away, don't go share it on a public website. But let me back up. So for those of you who weren't with us last month, this is probably the most remarkable, biggest consumer response to AI since ChatGPT itself. And basically what you can do now, any of you, is within minutes, you can create a podcast episode where a male and female host talk back and forth about whatever subject you've educated it on. And now, because I'm on the road, I can't play audio, I can't stream the audio, but you can find in our notes from last month, and we'll send them out next week as well, and you can just Google on this, an amazingly realistic, completely AI generated podcast talking about whatever that topic is. So if we were to upload the Forbes article from when I featured Mike's great work on his first time leader program, we would just listen then to 10 minutes of a podcast talking about this innovative program from Mediabrands and what were the elements. And it's completely engaging. You would be completely fooled by this. And so for any of you, this is free. This is completely free. If you go to notebooklm.google.com, you would just simply click the new notebook, and it's going to ask you to upload your sources. Now, that can be some slides. It can be a document. It could be a PDF file. You could just paste text in. You could put a link to a website. And once you've uploaded your source, it will then automatically, and it sounds like Dwayne's warning us, if you give it a lot, it could churn for a while. But it's going to give you a summary. You could click a button and get a frequently asked question document, a study guide, a briefing document, convert it to a timeline, or what everyone's going crazy, you just generate a deep dive conversation, and they should just call it podcast because that's the format. And you're going to be given an audio file that you can distribute. And so imagine, I mean, Dwayne, back in the day when we were doing so much life science product training, everything started with the binder, right? You know, module 1, anatomy and physiology, module 2. That's great. But then we also would create workshops. We would create study guides. We'd create job aids. We would create e-learning, multimedia, like different ways to accommodate different learning styles and for reinforcement and for spaced learning. You can drop your core documents in this, and with no money and just a little bit of time, create all these supplemental documents, learning assets for your learners. And I'm seeing Varner, hey Varner from MITRE here. He's saying, you know, our company is super sensitive about putting any of our information into external AI tools. Be sure to clear your content. So I'm trying to enlighten you about what is possible, and I'm completely ignoring all the real world. Like, be careful out there, folks. Like, do it with your own. Do it with articles from the LeadX website if you want to play with it. You know, the case studies and things. I don't want to get anybody fired. Let's just put it that way. Don't get fired because Kevin Cruz said I should upload all my training documents. You know, play around with it first and then get permission. And so that's an important one. Whoops. But I think that this is, again, what we're seeing here is version 1.0. And just like ChatGPT, what's going to happen is there's going to be versions here where you can upload your documents into a safe container. And there's going to be corporate versions of this. You're going to be able to pick, I want different voices for the narrators. I want a long podcast. I want a short podcast. And separate from the podcast, more controls on the study guide and things. This is just getting started. What I'm fascinated by is we are seeing announcements from many training vendors out there, the authoring system companies, et cetera, where it's like, now create training in minutes with our AI generators. You can do that because they're just feeding ChatGPT and this tool right here. So you don't have to buy their tools to do it. You could do it yourself. If they have some wrappers or support, that's a different story. But the world of instructional design is moving very quickly to sort of an AI first as well. On that note, I went over, which I apologize about. It was great to see everyone. Mike, big thanks for joining us. Awesome. We're going to send out the notes to everyone. I encourage people to connect with you, Mike, on LinkedIn. So you're going to deepen their social capital as well. And we're going to see everyone next month.